Good evening. Welcome to Politically Incorrect. Let me tell you who's with us today. Dave Foley, one of my favorite guests over the years, made one more appearance for me. This is his new DVD, Kids in the Hall, Same Guys, New Dresses. Love that. Governor Gary Johnson, my favorite governor. I'll tell you why in a minute. He is an Ironman, mountain climber, governor of New Mexico. Thank you for coming back with us, sir.
Thanks.
Jane Chastain, always a good guest for us, co-host of the Judicial Watch Report on the USA Radio Network and a columnist for WorldNetDaily.com. And Gene Simmons, as if I have to tell you, is the #1 gold record champion as the frontman for KISS. And his new magazine, which I am featured in right next to a condom ad, called Gene Simmons' Tongue, on the stands now. Give a hand to our panel. Okay. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, the governor is pretty much my favorite governor because he is pretty much also the only politician in America that I know of who's had the guts to say that our drug war really needs a serious rethinking, and especially... I never understand that. You say things like that, people applaud, but somehow when they get in the voting booth, you know, it just doesn't work that way.
Actually, I think the people are ahead of the politicians on this one.
But why don't they vote
They're a little
the way they
disoriented
applaud?
From weed.
What?
They're a little disoriented from the weed.
Well,
There's an awful lot of... Well, I think I voted, man. I don't know.
I'm at a disadvantage. What is the consensus? You guys seem to understand each other. Yes, the governor votes my... What is your way? What is that thing? Because I have a feeling I have a comment to make. Well, in other words, the people are ahead of the government. What does that mean?
Well, that drugs should be considered a health problem rather than a criminal justice problem, that we need to stop arresting 1.6 million people a year.
I don't agree.
You don't agree?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all.
You think we should continue to arrest people on drugs?
I'll tell you what I think we should do. As king of the world, here's what I would do. I would set up sections in town, in New York, Los Angeles, and so on, that are legal to do whatever the hell you want to do to yourself. You want to shoot up heroin? Legal. Smoke cigarette, do everything. In point of fact, right now, we are punishing people who want to smoke cigarettes. You can't do it in the building because it's all this stuff. If you get caught drunk driving, you get, punishment. As king of the world, if you're caught drunk driving and you bang into somebody, even if you don't kill them, death.
Gene,
well,
you know what?
No,
But
wait. Maybe we don't disagree at all.
Yeah.
In that, do drugs and do harm to somebody else.
Right.
That ought to be punishable.
But I want to
drink and drive. That ought to be punishable.
All right, but you're forgetting one thing.
No, I think we're forgetting the most important thing here.
Out of the bottle on tobacco and alcohol. They have huge companies that lobby
because they're legal, which means they can afford people to go to Washington and make campaign contributions.
You can never put those two back.
But what you're really talking 80 million Americans have done illegal drugs. I mean, you've got to realize that it's out of the bottle already.
All right, but you say 80 million Americans have done illegal drugs, and you're right about that, but what you're forgetting is in this past month, according to the household survey on substances, over 100 million people have used alcohol, around 40 million people have used tobacco, and something like 14 million people have used drugs. That's 6% of the population.
I see. So we live in a country where if you do something that only 6% of the people do, you go to jail. That's really the idea of America.
The idea that we've lost the drug war, so we ought to just give up.
You know what? First of all, when people answer surveys about the drugs they do, sometimes they lie. Are you doing cocaine right now? Yes, come over, you got me.
Yeah.
How stupid is that?
The government... The government says that drug use has been cut in half over the last 20 years, and that's absolutely false. They say that drug use has dropped from 24 million users down to 12 million users. Well, listen, we're arresting 1.6 million people a year. I refuse to believe that we are arresting 1 out of every drug user in this country. And does that mean that as we proceed to hundreds of users of drugs in this country that we're going to arrest 18 million people a year? I'm going to live to see 80 40 million people arrested in this country.
Hey, let me ask you one thing.
Bush be helping support the drug industry then?
No.
Should he get tariffs
We're just
like the steel
asking
industry?
for consistency. What do you think is more deleterious to your health? Marijuana or McDonald's?
Well, let me tell you one thing, Bill.
Seriously.
No one has had to be protected from someone who was high on a hamburger.
No one.
That's not.
But that's where.
And has anyone had to be protected from someone who was high on pot?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I was in my college dorm. My roommate, who I thought was straight, jumped on me in the middle of the night. The guy was clearly on something. It wasn't a cigarette. And by the way,
so you don't know what he was on.
Marijuana.
And
I think, no, it's very clear that because later on I thought it was because of my magnanimous personality, but I found out he was the weed dealer in school much later on.
so you're basing our drug policy in America on the fact that in college somebody tried to lick you at night.
I mean, Is this? You're not likely to be made king of the world, are you?
Yes, Governor Johnson, please add some intelligence to this
Look, the bottom line drug strategy ought to be reducing death, disease, and crime. The bottom line ought to be putting more resources into education. The bottom line ought to be giving treatment to people that need treatment. I would maintain that 90% of the drug problem today is prohibition-related, not use-related, and that is not to discount the problems with use. But that's what we ought to be concentrating on, are the problems with use.
An addict will not come in voluntarily for treatment. There are only two reasons that an addict will come in for treatment. A drug addict, a hardcore drug addict, will not. There are only two ways. One, if they're incarcerated and therefore forced to get the treatment, or number two, their health deteriorates to the point that they can't use the drugs
let me talk about a harm
anymore,
reduction.
and then they get the treatment only till they're rehabilitated to the point they can start using again.
Harm reduction strategy, Zurich, Switzerland. In Zurich, Switzerland, if you're a heroin addict, you can get free heroin. You have to go to a doctor. You have to go to a doctor. You have to get a prescription. The idea was death, disease, and crime would decrease in Zurich, Switzerland. Free heroin, no more overdose, no more hepatitis C because the needles were clean, no more HIV, no more hepatitis C, no more crime involved to have to steal the product. The idea, death, disease, crime, plummet. I talked to the chief of police from Zurich, Switzerland a couple years ago. He's in Albuquerque. He said, I was in law enforcement. We knew that death, disease, and crime was going to skyrocket when they did this in Zurich. He said, I'm here today to tell you that death, disease, and crime has plummeted in Zurich, Switzerland as a result of this heroin maintenance program. The point is, looking at it from a health standpoint rather than a criminal justice standpoint, and that needs to be the